Resources Committee, Wednesday the 25th of May. Welcome to everyone. Item 1 on the agenda is the appointment of Vice Chair for the municipal year 2022 to 23. I would like to nominate Councillor Peter Ruffles from the Chair. Seconded by Councillor McMullen. Thank you very much. Are there any other nominations? No. Right, can we have votes in favour of that, please? All in favour, except Councillor Ruffles. Thank you very much, Councillor Ruffles. Item number 2 is apologies. I don't think we have any.
No apologies, Chair.
Right, full house, excellent. Item number 3 are the minutes of the last meeting on the 15th of February. This is page 7 to 18 of your pack. Do we have any comments on the minutes? No. Could we have a proposer for the minutes then, please? Councillor Bull, thank you. And the seconder? Councillor Ruffles, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item number 4, Chairman's announcements. I don't have any. Except that everyone needs, because we're being live streamed, everyone needs to talk into the microphones, please, because they're new and they need to keep up and personal. Sorry, there's nothing I can do about that, Councillor Newton. Thank you. Item number 5, declarations of interest. I know we have the normal ones where certain members are members of local town and parish councils. We've certainly got 3 on here from Hertford. Councillor Newton, is that you? Yeah, Councillor Newton, and another one from Councillor Bull Buntingford. Anyone else? Councillor Alder for Sawbridgeworth. Right, anyone? Is that it? Thank you very much. And item number 6, the Health and Safety Committee meeting minutes from the 22nd of February. We are just receiving this. I don't know if anyone's got any questions or comments for the Health and Safety Officer. Yeah, this is just we're receiving the committee minutes. The report is the item 7. Yep.
Up close and personal, is it? Right. It's just, I think it's a correction. I think it's a mistake in the minute of that meeting, because you've got capital projects 7.3. You've got Hertford Theatre. The date for the report says March 21, and I think it must be in March 22.
We'll make the amendment to the minutes. These have actually been checked by the group, so well done for spotting that, because the group failed. But we will change that to 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alder. I don't know what we do without you. Any other comments? No, we're just receiving those. Moving on to item 7, which is the Health and Safety Quarterly Report, quarter 4, incorporating the annual review. That's on pages 29 to 50. Councillor Newton.
Just relating to agenda item 6, 9.3, DK advised committee staffing issues with APCDA, page 24. Could you just, for that acronym, say what APCOA is? And it says the date of next meeting is the 3rd of May, which has gone. So is that what's coming up in the next report?
Unfortunately, the PA that took the minutes wasn't able to turn them around in time to bring to these papers, but they'll come to the next meeting.
All right.
I'll let Peter Dickinson explain what the acronym stands for, but essentially it's our parking contractor. So that's why we haven't broken it down. We do normally break down the acronyms. It's just because it's an organisational name.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct, Simon. It's just as the company is known as Apcoa Parking. They're a large organisation. That's simply the title they go by.
But we'll add parking in future.
Thank you. Okay, so the report, which is item 7. Yes, Councillor Demand.
Thank you. There's at 9 on page 39, it talks about the loan worker contract update and the new devices are being rolled out. There was talk in council many months ago that members would get these. Is that still the plan, or is that not the plan anymore?
I've had no further discussion with anyone regarding the rollout for members. The provision was built into the new contract if that was to go ahead. Simon?
Can I respond further, Chair?
Yes.
Sorry. As I understood it, you may well know better, but it's the members group that have been looking at this, and they've sought support from Peter where they've needed to. So we're not leading it. That's the honest answer. And my understanding on the last iteration that I had was that we were looking at more of an app basis, because that was more sensible for members. The problem with allocating the devices is potentially it needs to be maintained and continue to be used. So it can cause more problems if people aren't regularly using it and then loaning in and out. So I think it was also, as I understood it, but again, I would have to refer, I think, Democratic Services in the end, but it was more about also what members were prepared to use and how they were prepared to work with it. And I think there was not clarity on that. Various members having various ways of working. Maybe I'll leave it like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Alder?
Thank you. It's 13.4 on in item 7. How can we, sorry, how soon can we expect that all staff will return to the office-based work going forward?
When I'm sorry if it wasn't clear in the papers, but staff have returned to the office, but on a blended work basis. They did that in November last year. We did put that in the papers. What we've said is that we will be reviewing those arrangements November this year, which is a 12-month review. Basically, bar about 15 staff, everyone is working on what we're describing as a blended work pattern, which for most staff is 50% of their time in the office, 50% at home. So if you're full-time, that means that you alternate 3 days, 2 days in terms of the split, which is fairly consistent actually with other local authorities. In fact, I was at Broxbourne a couple of weeks ago. They've got a 60-40 split, probably to help the full-timers out a little bit more, but our full-timers can do 3 solid days in the office if they wish to, rather than have the alternates. And in Revs and Bens, they're on a more blended programme as they were prior to the lockdown, and therefore their staff come in on a rotation, on a rota, once every 3 weeks, depending on the role, once every week if they're a manager. So that's the arrangement. There are fixed staff, which we call that in terms of they're fixed in the office. That's because they wanted to be in the office, didn't want to work in their home environment, wasn't suitable potentially, or because their roles dictate that the requirement is to be in the office, a lot of the caretakers in the FM team.
Councillor Alder.
Yes.
I mean,
can
we
come
will be
back?
discussing the blended working more under the
Yes.
human resources paper, but yes.
Sorry, but well, just coming back on that, we've had experience from in town council of staff waiting for almost an hour to get a response, and then it cuts out. The information is not available on the website, so they've had to make a phone call. I wonder if after this meeting I can refer that to Simon, so that he can look into it, because otherwise if staff
matter's
are back,
already
they're
been-
not answering.
Just for your clarity, that matter is fully aware. Helen Standen was leading the project on that with Ben Wood, because what you're talking about is the response time on customer services. Extra staff have been brought in, staff have been put on fixed term contracts, support has been given to the staff in terms of their welfare. So the matter is well managed at this stage. I'm quite happy to talk to you a bit about what I understand, but really the best person to liaise with over this is Ben Wood, who manages the customer services team. And I know that the call waiting has been a complete priority. There's been particular issues, as I understand it, contacting the housing team. And you're right to query with regards to blended working and is that having an impact, but it's fundamentally been around the number of calls coming in and, as you say, problems with the website, etc. So there is a lot of improvement to be made, but the key thing was to put extra resource. So each team allocated a at least half-day person to get through the backlog of the emails, because there was backlogs on emails and everything. My understanding is the matter's being addressed. I only really know what I've just shared. Obviously we're supporting, Jane has been supporting complaints training, but again, that's been on pause because the priority has been to respond to all the calls coming in. So work is being done. Yeah, it comes in at the same point. No, that's what it is. Customer services are the front end for all the calls, and that's where the issues have been.
Thank you. Any more health and safety? We're still dealing with the health and safety at the moment. We will be coming back to the blended working under the human resources report.
Sorry, I was going to say something in agreement with Councillor along there. We've had the same problem, but I have spoken to Councillor Cutting, and he's spoken to Ben, and I gather, in fact, the improvements are going to be made on this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Macmillan. Yeah, it's correct. Sorry, the portfolio holder for HR and for administration is Councillor George Cutting, and yeah, he therefore works with myself, James, and Ben, and he has been working with Ben on this matter. You're absolutely right. And there has also been feedback from Charrington's House, etc., etc. It's all been made aware, and it's a priority. Thank you,
Councillor Newton.
Yes, mine's a very simple one. It's question 4 is reporting accidents. Could you define a non-reportable accident? Because when you look at Grange paddocks in Bishop Stortford, they've had an awful lot of them compared to everywhere else. So I just wondered why.
Yes, a non-reportable accident is one that doesn't have to be reported to the Health and Safety Executive. There's strict criteria.
Could you define what that would be?
That could be a fracture to fingers. It could be a collapse of a structure resulting in a fatality. It's the very serious accidents. It could be collapse of a building on a building site, for example. Yeah, the reportables. The definition.
A definition of a non-reportable accident.
And the non-reportable accidents will be paper cuts and minor bruising, slip strips, falls. So they're the small things.
Is this to do with how long the absence is likely to last?
It's over 7 days for red or if someone has an accident at work.
We do report the accident internally. This is about reporting to the external bodies.
Yeah.
When we define that, I just think that helps understand.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the numbers per site, Grange Paddocks is obviously a new facility, has a much higher footfall. Yeah. So in comparison to one of the smaller facilities, it probably have a slightly higher increase in the number of minor injuries such as nosebleeds or bumping heads.
Just 2 extra points on that, because I'm aware obviously the committee did ask at the last meeting, and we are working on that in terms of getting some of this comparable data at the leisure centres, because I know the same question came up at the last meeting about why does Grange Paddocks have more. Really is simple terms of economies of scale, so there's nothing to be alarmed at with Grange Paddocks. Obviously we can reassure you further by getting some leisure centre figures that are like Grange Paddocks, so you can see that there is nothing out of kilter. We will do that, but SLA obviously have to provide that data to us, so we're in the process of gathering that. Secondly, just an apology, because I have noticed I can't remember exactly what page it's on. I think most of the committee members are familiar, but I did promise leadership team that I would point this out. When we refer to IP, it means injured person. So IP is injured person. I think you guys are used to that, but I just wanted to clarify. And I know you like us to break up any acronyms, and we will make sure we do that again going forward. I think we've got used to how good you all are in terms of these languages now. So apologies, we'll keep breaking it down.
Thank you. Any other health and safety questions on this report? No. Peter, thank you very much indeed. There's a lot of tightening up of loose ends has been done here, so thank you very much for that.
Sorry, just one more comment on the paper itself. You will note that this is the combination of Q4 because we jumped straight into the paper without Peter, and that's fine, taking your questions. But this was obviously an annual report alongside the Q4 report. We haven't got you full list of annual comparisons again, because that's been quite difficult to do in terms of comparing elsewhere. We have said that we'll try and include some of that in the next report for you at Q1 by sort of backtracking now the year's ended, because that's also the issue. It's about getting the time in to get the realistic data. And we will look at whether we can at least get some SLA data, so you've got some comparisons on those leisure centres. But that was noted in the report, and just wanted the minute, I guess, to note that. So you're expecting that to come along to the next meeting. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Yeah. Right. I don't know whether it's a fair comment to make to this meeting, but I see Buntingford Service Centre on the agenda here, and certain things you're going to do there. Have you heard any whispers about, you know, the tip at Aspendon that's been closed for some time, that belongs to someone else? It don't belong to the county. Have you heard any whispers about it moving to the recycling area?
No, Councillor Bull, I've not heard anything of that nature. I'm not aware that there's anything coming to the depot from another site, but I can certainly make inquiries with the head of operations to see if that has been discussed, but I'm not aware of it.
No, the reason I've mentioned it is because I, for one, have been campaigning because we need recycling. You know, we've got outlying villages that use it for coming to the town, and it's an ideal place there. But anyway,
I believe there is discussion about, and I think Peter will know better on this, is the way the question was asked, but there isn't a plan to move what's already in one place to us, but there is a plan for our expansion on our own site to be able to do more of the recycling at Buntingford, which I think is the same point. So if you're saying, are we looking at expanding that to serve the needs better? My understanding is yes, but it's all being done in partnership with North Herts. Right. And obviously that slows things, because it's about, partnerships are good, but when you're talking about green miles, etc., suddenly you need to find somewhere that works for both. And that's often the challenge. But Buntingford has a lease on it, which is ours, and we will maximise the utility or facility in the best way possible. That's my understanding. And part of that is increasing the number of recycling that's happening directly on site. So that already has begun, hasn't it, Peter?
There has been an increase.
Yeah.
Yes. The debate is whether the site actually has capacity to manage, because it's quite small. And now that we are double waste collection, residual waste, we're getting a number of vehicle strikes actually hitting the walls of the tipping hall, because of the number of vehicles that are now coming in to collect bulk waste. And the bulkers, as they're referred to, have a very, very small turning circle in which to maneuver. So we've recently had another strike and damage to the walls and the bollard. Nothing structurally dangerous. It's been repaired and we're looking into it. That's why we're implementing some different speed controls and control measures on the depot site.
thanks for that. Anyway, is that off?
Brilliant.
Thank you. Right, thank you. If that's it, can we have a proposer for this report, please? Councillor Alder and a seconder, Councillor Dumont. Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter, very much for all your hard work. It's yeah, and we look forward to the next instalment as well. Thank you. I think your part is done now. If you wish to leave, you may, but we're happy to have you remain if you'd rather. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, for attending. Just to also say, a key author of all the reports tonight was Emily Caldwell. She has an early flight in the morning, so I insisted that she didn't attend, but she is here in presence because of the contributions that she's made. All right.
Thank you. Right, agenda item number 8, which is the Human Resources Management Quarterly Statistics for Q4. That's starts on page 51 to 60. Any comment? Councillor Alders first. I see Councillor Ruffles has got his hand up as well. Councillor Alder.
Thank you, Chairman. It's item 3, vacancy data on recruitment, 3.1.4. 3.1.4. Yes, number 3 is sort of gone missing. It's absent without leave, I guess. Right. What I find quite concerning is the high number of vacancies in planning, and I'm sure that this is of concern not only to us as councillors but also to you as officers in trying to remedy this, and also housing and health as 4. I just wonder how many sort of consultants staff have you had to employ in planning to deal with all the issues? Because I've noticed also that so many of the planning meetings have also been cancelled, and I guess maybe due to staff, I don't know, but it is of concern, and I know that it's quite difficult to recruit people to planning in our district. We're not quite positioned in the right place to pay the right amount of money. But anyway, could I have how you're addressing it?
Yes.
And also, you've talked about service restructuring. How far down the road are you with that?
Thank you, Councillor Alder. I think the first thing to point out is that the section referred to is the posts on hold. So that 8 you're referring to means that they're on hold and they're not actively being recruited to on a permanent basis. That figure hasn't changed too much from previous quarters in planning. It's been that number for some time, and the positions are covered by agency staff. They're not consultants, they're agency staff, but the agency staff, the quality of them is not as good as we would like. The marketplace is not to do with us as a district. There is a complete shortage of planners across the country. Unfortunately, our grow your own route of travel has had some limited success, not the level of success we would have liked. We would have had a pipeline coming through now had things been better. Part of that was because the planning framework for apprenticeships was effectively gone for the best part of 2 years. I've heard that it's now coming back, but coming back at a time where we have experienced that a pandemic and supporting apprentices during a pandemic is not really what it's made out to be, because of course they can't work alongside people. So that hasn't been good. We've also, as you know, need to make £3 million worth of savings. So the majority of those posts are on hold because of the savings that are required. The housing and health ones in particular are likely not to be maintained. Predominantly talking about administration posts. The plan is for there to be a corporate support hub, which I'm guessing there's some awareness of, certainly been written to in terms of the transformation programme, but a full report is going to the exec later in June. So those posts are all services now have undertaken a service review, including human resources, in terms of initial stage. The planning service review, I know Councillor Newton has raised it before, how long has this taken to evolve? I think the head of planning would recognise that herself. She's been working on this structure for nearly 3 years now. The latest iteration has been delivered. It has been agreed by a leadership team. It's a question of her beginning to implement that with the newly appointed transformation programme manager and obviously support from HR. So I can't give you an exact timescale. I would really like to. I would like to say to you it's a few weeks away. The paper is written, the structure is written, but there's been a lot of firefighting continuously in planning, meaning that they haven't managed to sit down really and just start implementing it. So it will come along soon. The level of service from planning is staffed up at the levels that it should be, but they are still dealing with backlogs as well. And the frustration, if I'm honest, from the leadership team is that how do we break this circle that seems to always be the case almost in planning of backlogs and trying to catch up, more staff, still haven't caught up, backlogs, more staff. How do you get a new structure in? It's a bit of a vicious circle and we do need to break it. The head of service recognises that themselves. I'm part of the service review board when we challenge each service about their structure, and we have talked about them getting someone in to actually to implement the structure while the rest of them continue to firefight. What the issue is, the number of applications is significantly increased, and they're looking at triage programs so that you sort of have somebody more senior very quickly look and dish them into various piles so that they can be progressed more quickly. But even that takes some time, and obviously takes you having those experts available to do the triage. So all I can say is it's another ongoing piece of work, but planning applications are huge in our district. And obviously we have quite a few big projects, Gilston being one of them, that also are an extra drain on your standard planning service. They have got all the managers in place, but the new structure will bring team leaders, which will also help. So yeah, hopefully I can come to the next meeting and tell you that we're at least underway. That would be my expectation.
Thank you. Councillor Ruffles was first and then Councillor Ball.
Chairman, I'm on page 53 at the very top of that page, 3.1.1. And it's a tiny question, really, a tidy question. The 4 to retirement, and I wonder what retirement actually means, because there isn't such a thing as a retirement age. I understood when it was 60 and 65 some years ago but how do people fall into that category where the 4 here are listed?
Yeah, so what you're referring to is the statutory pension age, really, and it was also the retirement age, which I think it's now 4 years, isn't it, that it's been taken away, which was to stop people being lazy, where they tended not to manage the older members of staff and just go, it'll be fine because they'll retire in a couple of years. So now people have to manage them just like any other member of staff if there's problems. So it doesn't mean people won't leave, but it obviously does pose a bit more of a challenge not having a retirement age, in total honesty, just from a pure sort of morale dynamics point of view. But the 4 retirements that are listed are genuine retirements. It's where the member of staff has informed us that they are retiring, and they are normally, if they're in the pension scheme, obviously then drawing down the pension. So they have very clearly, I happen to know quite a few of those are in Revs and Bens. The enjoyment, shall we say, of the pandemic and dealing with all the extra government schemes, which is a never-ending task for us, I'm afraid. You know, you're aware that we're managing the £150 back. We're managing potentially the payments to the homeowners in terms of hosting the Ukraines. Huge amount of work. And we already have a very limited number of staff. And if you thought planning was difficult, well, it always has been. Revs and Bens is in exactly the same state now, I'm afraid. There is a complete shortage. We're finding even with our blended working, which is allowing us to take people on from around the country, it's a real struggle. You need experienced people. Yes, so those are unfortunately real retirements. And we did try and talk them out of retirement, but they have retired.
Any follow-up?
I have a different question, but I think someone else is.
Yeah, Councillor Ball, do you wish to?
Yeah, following on from Councillor Alder, I've been on planning many years, and I've never been in this situation where I've sent an email to the planning officer and never got a response. So that gives you some idea of the strength that they're under, you know, the power of the work they've got to do. Obviously, I took it up with the chairman and got it sorted in, but it left a nasty taste in my mouth because I've never been in that position before. That was head of planning. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's there's definitely some issues there, and my understanding, which again, you've probably got the context if you're involved in planning, Councillor Ball, but a lot of people are choosing not to move home and are doing home improvements that require that planning permission. So they're quite small scale requests, a lot of these, hence that reason for looking at, is there some triaging where we can just get on with giving people permission and, move forward potentially. But yeah, it is a bit of a perfect storm, which I think was rehearsed here before. I'm afraid the storms just carried on and we've probably had a few more heavy rainfalls, I'm afraid. But yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ruffles, you had another question?
Yeah, Chairman, it's for you really, or for Simon. I suppose in a sense, fundamentally, it is, what are we here for as a committee? I just wonder. and it's around, the difference between operational management, which we must leave, and, committee responsibility, because we must bear some responsibility for some of the information that is being given to us. So I just wonder really why we're here, but I wonder why we're here in that way. And I was really looking at the same page that I was on before, 53, I think, 3.3.3, where I can understand COVID related absences and that sort of thing, but the big worry for me, and I think this committee has expressed that concern before, is understanding the mental health absences and stress, which is different, but in that same area of country. And so I'm wondering, from the figures that we have here, should something from this committee, when we're expressing concern, I know we're not going to get details back about the individual cases or circumstances, but is there anything that we ought to be recommending from this committee that could be taken forward somewhere? Where does it go? And to protect people's mental health, if indeed the authority is responsible for the illness in any way.
Thank you, Councillor Ruffles. I'll get in quick when else starts talking. Thank you. And you're quite right. It's not our remit to be looking at the operational micromanaging of the staff, but we are here as in a governance position, as a strategic overview and for strategic planning. So that is our role. But I know Simon's going to have a lot more to say.
Well, I think a key part of governance is monitoring, isn't it? So the reason why we bring the data that we bring, and we ask you to compare it and scrutinize it and obviously pick out anything that you think is of concern or of investigation, is so that you can demonstrate that you have been monitoring that. And then should we need that level of backing, we've got it. Obviously very important on health and safety that you are doing that. Because there is legal responsibilities, and this committee has the responsibility of health and safety, which you may recall until I arrived wasn't really being taken forward in the way that it should have been. So we've got that addressed, is the good news. So I think why we're here is clearer than it was maybe to start with. But it's also obviously to approve the policies, practices, and it is to query us as officers as to say, what are you doing about these mental health challenges? How are you supporting the staff? And I'm happy to answer that. I think the main thing that I would say on wellbeing at the moment is that we are just about to rerun our wellbeing survey. That's been delayed slightly by my own absence, just by a week or so. When I say that, I'm now not looking to run it until after the Jubilee weekend, because that wouldn't be the most sensible thing to do. But we need to find out how our staff are doing. The honest truth about wellbeing is we're better than most, I think, in terms of what we offer and the support that we've given, but the take-up's low. We don't find that staff, you remember when I shared those figures with the wellbeing week, we had 4s and 5s at best on each session, sometimes 1s and 2s. We could put it on in work time, it was paid time. Part of that is because we have staff that look after their own well-being possibly better than others. But if you're then going to say, well, that's not true because you've got lots of mental health well-being issues in your absence, completely consistent with everyone else in the country. You know, most people have suffered from the pandemic, and yes, there has also been absences as a result of the vaccination. We regularly saw 1 or 2 day absences from half of our staff following the initial vaccinations, very common with everyone else in the country. And of course, we have had people off with COVID that have had to isolate, that couldn't work or were not well enough to work when I say that, and that has impacted our figures. But yeah, the biggest area, and it has been for several years, but it has definitely been exacerbated by the pandemic, is mental wellbeing. I think the good news is it's more talked about. It's probably not wholly appropriate. I suffered with some mental wellbeing issues myself a couple of summers ago. I never thought it was particularly going to happen to myself. I still find it difficult to talk about it. I don't think I'm alone, if you see what I mean. So it's a very hard thing to manage, because it's hard for the individual to manage, is what I would say. So as an organisation, we've got all the tools. You can't force people to drink the tools, if you see what I mean. And you can give them time. We can give them support, but we also need them back doing work, and work is also part of the therapy. So it's a very hard one, mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I picked that out as well. I mean, we've got in the report that the main causes of absence are acute illness, stress and injury.
It's much better in the wellbeing and absence report later down.
Yeah, it is really. But it is disappointing that the take up is low when stress is a significant factor in absence.
Yeah, I know you were
So,
gonna ask that question.
yeah, I was going to raise. So, have you got a follow up? I mean, we will be talking more about well-being in the well-being report.
No, Chairman, I mean, I think it's a very, very important
11.
and the monitoring, our monitoring job is clearly a very real one there. And I'm grateful for the amount of detail that we have, given that we can't have proper detail because that's operational. I've got another question later on in this report.
Just a couple other comments on the wellbeing is obviously there is the EAP, that's the employee assistance program that you all know about. And then we do have the 6 face-to-face, or they're normally telephone-based counselling sessions as part of that. Obviously you are talking fairly quick fixes. And the biggest issue, if you don't mind putting it this way, is that the service available from the National Health Service is a limited one. At best, it's 6 sessions. It's then possibly 12. It's one size fits all, and it doesn't work for a lot of people, but it can be helpful, and we certainly encourage people towards it.
Thank you. Councillor Demand. And then I think Councillor Ruffles, did you have another question to follow on afterwards? Councillor Demand.
I just want to make sure I'm not jumping the queue, that's all. I mean, I think Councillor Ruffles makes a very good point about why are we here, because we do receive a lot of information, and I don't know where the right place to bring this in tonight's agenda, but as it's been brought, in terms of employee well-being, in the pandemic, we saw a spike in mental health issues, and that was largely correlated with being at home and people not having that interaction. And obviously we've got a blended working pattern here, and you've said you are looking at that in November. So that's an opportunity for myself as a member. I think my opinion's evolving over time. I think where I perhaps was quite in favour of it, I'm becoming less so over time. From a well-being point, and I'll be totally honest, from a productivity point of view as well. And I think just, we have, we don't shape all the society, but we shape our little bit of it here, don't we? And I think we've had a huge change in society overnight, and we just got to be absolutely sure before we make that stick forever. And I think could you just bear that in mind when you look at it?
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely agree. And then add one more term to this whole debate, and that's called the cost of living crisis. So I'm afraid it's challenging.
Thank you. Councillor Rose, I know you've got a question, but I think Councillor McMullen's question follows on from this, doesn't it? You need to put your mic on.
Yes, in fact, I was going to ask about this business of, we've done a marvelous job looking at the various statistics, and I've got great faith in everything we see here. But I am concerned about the level of productivity, which is ties in with you, of people, and how the poor managers they're not actually seeing these people so much as they were before. So I was just wondering what the level of productivity, and how are you sort of measuring that? Or is it just whether the staff are well or what? But we keep on hearing about this business of wanting to get people back in the office again. I don't know what your views are on that.
Yeah, no, I was aware you were going to ask this, and I think it's it's an ongoing question for us all to keep asking. Is probably the first point.
Yeah.
And I know it came up at a previous committee where we said, how do you manage the productivity? I mean, the way we manage productivity hasn't changed. It's to do with tasks being set in a one-to-one process, and also an appraisal process, and then measuring people against those tasks and objectives. I think, if I'm really honest, well, I think you also know that my opinion has been that I think work is good and interaction at work is good, and we shouldn't discard it. And possibly people have rushed to that a little bit too quickly. I thought it was interesting when that think tank said everyone will be back in the office in a couple of years' time, when no one expected anyone to say that. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Councillor Dumont. There was definitely a push towards it. And I think, if I'm honest, managers have tended to say it will work because they want it to work for the staff. I think there is a truth in that. And then probably if you said anything else, you wouldn't be really being honest, because you can understand why someone would do that. I think the service reviews are starting to show that we need to make sure the systems are working in a blended or agile or hybrid way, whatever term you want to use. And I think there has been some problems. And, we've been stressing to staff that it's absolutely essential they're fully contactable. Nobody should get a dead telephone number, which I've experienced myself on a couple of occasions. In fact, I raised this at leadership team. Heads of service have been asked to audit their own staff to check everyone is contactable. Jane's just finishing it off, finalising a full spreadsheet of everyone's blended working pattern so that we can obviously check against that should we need to, and obviously share that visibility is there. I'm not saying there is a massive problem there. I think it is an ongoing area to look at. I think it's difficult though, isn't it? Because there is a sort of sea change. So if you want to attract people coming in, we've had staff leave us because they didn't like the 50-50. They wanted 100% working from home. I had a couple of staff leave us for that reason. Sometimes to do with location. I'm already being told with the cost of living challenge that some of the staff that are coming in once every 3 weeks are saying it's too much because of the cost, because where they live. So, all I'm saying is we've got a lot of challenges here. We also quite like to create a space to take on a large tenant to generate some income from this building. So I'm just saying you're balancing all of these pressures. There isn't quite the ideal option available maybe. But I think the plan is to try and make 50-50 work as much as we can. But I think we're going to need people to be honest in that November process. And I think if members... we need to invite you as members to be part of that process potentially as well, so that we get maybe a bit more of a customer view thrown in if we need that balance with what staff are saying. I think that could be useful. So I'll certainly look at this committee, maybe at the very least being part of that.
Thank you. Did you have any follow-up? No. Okay. Councillor Ruffles, you had a question.
It's nothing like as serious and important as that last set of statements from Mr. O'Hare. But I'm on page 57. I would like to make a little sort of advert to my fellow councillors, all of them, that 3.4.7 does appear on our members' information bulletin as an invitation to take these training programme items just as the staff have to do. And 6 months down the line, not all the staff have done it from the wording of the report, but they really are quite fun to do. And you get a certificate at the end to put behind the clock, and entertaining, but quite important for us as councillors and for our general knowledge in the wider world. So I hope perhaps some members who don't have to do it might.
Just to update on that, so members services obviously look after members training, and in fairness, at the changeover from Helen Farrell to Jane, well, initially to Emily and then to Jane, in terms of leading on the L&D, Emily got it all rolled out to our staff, but didn't prompt Lorraine, so it didn't go out to members immediately. I believe that has now been addressed. I certainly asked for it to be addressed a couple of weeks back in preparation for this paper, funny enough. But so that will be rolled out. We have, and I'm just rehearsing for members that we've had a lot of negative feedback sometimes from members about wanting to do these courses, i.e. that they don't want to do them. So what we have made is completely clear that if you have done something similar somewhere else, we will validate that and count that as your annual refresher. They're very short courses. They're not difficult to do. They are just annual refreshers. You can cheat them a little bit if you think you're really hot, because you can jump to the test and take it and then pass, because of course there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, I think that's enough. Thank you. Councillor Newton.
Yes, I just want to agree with the chance of perhaps having to go at some of these things. I've actually gone a little bit ahead of myself. I'm on 106, which we haven't actually got to. But it's the bounce back ability thing. I was so taken with bounce back ability. It's been on my mind all evening. So, can I do the bounce back ability one, please? Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Go for it. Thank you.
I think I know Councillor Newton is referring to the Resilience Wellbeing Programme, and I'll get Jane to say a little bit more about that when we get on there. But we are trying to get hold of the recordings ourselves, and I did say to the chairperson that we would look at trying to share them with members, but I don't think we've quite got hold of the materials yet. But you would have seen in the report that we're asking to keep them for longer than a couple of weeks, because customer services are so inundated with calls they can't undertake the training at the moment, and bounce back ability is definitely something that you need in customer services.
Thank you. While we're on the learning and development, page 56, 3.4.2, I see Jane has been delivering Pdr training, and that's including competencies, and a lot more of these training sessions are being carried out virtually via Zoom. is that the plan to carry on doing them virtually when possible?
Sorry, the plan generally is to offer a mixed provision, really.
Fine.
Certainly staff briefings are all moving, sorry, not staff briefings, the manager's away day, for example, is moving to be in-house. This microphone system and camera system is allowing there to be more hybrid elements in the leadership team now. It is working okay, actually, but yeah, I think there's still some fun. But what I suppose I'm stressing is the PDR that Jane delivered and I delivered as well was very much, we offered it on Zoom, but we set up a room locally for people because we're still rolling out laptops to staff, so staff can't all use the Zoom facility as easily as they'd like to. So it's a blended provision, I think is probably a fair comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions on this paper? Right, let's move to, can I have a proposer for it, please? Councillor Newton and seconder Councillor Ruffles. Thank you. I'll take a vote, please. Unanimous. Thank you very much. And moving on to item 5, the annual turnover report starts on page 61. What? Oh, it's item 9. Sorry. Yeah, but it's on page 61. Page 61. Right. Councillor McMullen, you got your hand up first.
Yes. Staff recognition scheme. I see that you've gone away from having what was the other scheme you had? Yes. And what is this? What is the staff recognition scheme then?
Okay, well, so this has
And
been
coming in June.
This is a project being led by the East Hearts Together group. So just demonstrating again that the work they get involved, it's been on there for some time. It's about supporting effectively the cultural direction. So obviously you want your recognition to reward the culture that you're seeking, and it has previously been linked with our values. But the employee of the month meant that sometimes we had lots of nominations and sometimes we didn't. And actually people maybe should have won on previous months were then not in the rounds for months when they would have definitely won. Do you see what I mean? So it's about getting there more categories and a better spread. Emily Caldwell, who was promoted from trainee to HR officer, has led on this project. I've purposely stayed out of it, so there's a limit to what I can say, but fundamentally it's about having more categories, having a ceremony in July that people are invited to as sort of quarterly winners, and then it's the best of annual round. So that's the plan. So it'll be July 23 rather than 22. We're also getting some sponsorship from one of the waste providers, I believe, so that the event becomes a bit more significant, and it's going to be much more about celebrating. So what we found is that people enjoy seeing others win awards and see that recognition live. So we're looking at a bit more video, making it more interactive, potentially also using that on our web pages to help attract people as well. So just enhancing it, but not with money, just to be clear. Not with money at all. In fact, actually, financial rewards don't have a lot of gain in those sorts of schemes. It is about the recognition. And so we're looking at apparently paperweights, which I'm not sure about from a sustainability point of view, but I think it's just more called a desk trophy. Does that work better? So, yeah.
Thank you. Someone else had their hand up. Sorry, I missed it. Councillor Demant.
Thank you. It's just a follow up from what Councillor McMullen was saying about staff recognition. Just thought come to my head that we're rewarding values. Does productivity, just following on before, ever get rewarded? Is that one of the values? Does the planner who's processed his target or her target and processed the most applications? Is there any of that, or is it more value based?
Yeah, no, the work doesn't tend to be measured quite in that way. It is locally measured in terms of turnaround times and hitting those SLAs. The values that we're referring to are the core values that we've had for some time, which is we're here to help. So that's your customer service. So actually, of course, if you turn things around quickly, that will demonstrate good service normally. So there is a link. There's the we are here to help is the customer service. We aim high is about exceeding our standards. So if someone is doing better than the expected levels, they might be nominated for that. And then the third area, so we've done, we're here to help, we aim high, and we work together, which is about the teamwork and the way you support your colleagues. And then the 6 core staff competencies that we shared, I think, at the previous meeting, part of the new revised PDR process has meant we've now got 6 layers under those values. So that's communication, proactivity, you know, the core sort of team working, again, managing relationships. And of course, customer service, etc. And then there's a 6-1 on commercial now. But the point is that that's allowed there to be more categories and to actually get those effective behaviours clearly. So things like ensuring that you deliver on time, which is very key in personal effectiveness, would be related to your productivity point, for example. So I wouldn't say that you get a prize if you hit 10, but if you've hit 12 and someone nominates you to say how brilliant you've been at hitting 12, then you might get an award. Does that make sense? And then the slight difference now is that when you have the annual categories that come, you get much more interaction, because this process is much more about engagement and celebration across the organization than really about just picking out individuals. It's letting people celebrate that success. That's what you get when you get a really good recognition scheme. All people involved feel like a little bit lifted because it's nice. So it's about sharing that celebration. And part of that is having a voting process for the annual awards from the best of from the quarters. Do you see what I mean? So you get that better turnaround, more interaction. Well, this is what we're hoping. We'll have to prove it to you first. But yeah, we're going to revamp the staff suggestion scheme as well.
Thank you. Any more questions? I noted that although the turnover statistics do look high to anyone looking in, under item 5, the stability rates, it's reassuring to see the council stability rate is as high as it is at 95%, and much higher than the target of 90%. So that is reassuring. It's disappointing on the next page, item 7. This is page 65, the exit questionnaire analysis, and it's disappointing. Only 55% of people were completing it. I suppose you can't make that happen. But generally, the responses are quite favourable. I mean, always going to get people unhappy, whatever.
Just to respond to that, I mean, first of all, it's a bit of a saving grace, but I do wish to share it, which is that a 40% return rate on a questionnaire means it's statistically significant, the results that you get back. So that's probably the first point. But yeah, you would not want to force people to do an exit questionnaire for obvious reasons. In fact, you possibly would like to force some people not to do it, but that's probably not to be said. In terms of our turnover rate, I think the thing to note there is it's up from last year. It's not up compared to the LGA last figure that was received, which I believe was 16%. I'm not looking at the right page. Let's just do that. Sorry, the local government average. Yeah, it's a bizarre one. It went from 14 to 15 is what I noted, but I believe we're still working. So we're working with that 15% figure, which is why we said we're just still below. But the reality is that figure's back from 18, 19. So it has been updated for nearly 4 years. We hope to get more of an update. Again, something I could do is ask the local HR network in terms of Hertfordshire to see if we can get some comparison data, because they would have just done their annual figures as well. So it's quite a good time to see if we can gather something. So I'll explore that for the next meeting, but also to stress that leadership team have asked in future that we add some figures into the staffing numbers where you can see the departmental turnovers, because obviously they look quite high. For example, HR looks very high, but you're probably aware we're only a team of 8, or in fact 7 now. So it's in proportion to that, but leadership team thought it'd be helpful if we put some of the original staff figures in there, so that when you've got the percentage, it's not just the average head count, you can see the number of leavers that amounted to. So we've given you most of it, but they've asked for more and we will deliver.
Thank you. That would be helpful. The vacancy rate as well in items 8.1 is lower than and significantly lower than the local government average for English authorities. So that is good, although it feels very high having so many vacant posts. It's actually a lower percentage. And also the lower recruitment costs, that's good to see, as long as we're not skimping on them and not getting the staff in. But you say that's not the problem.
They've come down in part. You may remember the fantastic deal we got from Indeed, which was £4,000 for 60 jobs in a year, averaged £67 a job. So obviously you can see we spent a bit more than just on Indeed, but that will include agency fees, which can be extortionate. We tend to avoid them all the time, but I do know that where we're struggling to recruit lawyers, we're looking at that route at the moment. you could be looking at as much as 17-18% on a 50k salary. So do the maths, that's going to have a big effect on our average. So the average may change. You will recall we have brought in the ATS. We haven't got the system working fully yet. There's been some difficulties, particularly with IT getting the license working there, which is obviously frustrating, but I'm sure we don't want to spend a meeting talking about IT. So what we'll do is we'll stick with the ATS and say that that had a very good advertising package. And although we haven't gone live with the ATS, we are using the advertising package there, which you may recall I shared with you of being a figure of £230, which is incredibly good because it goes on a multitude of the big general sites and will hit the relevant people. That will improve further when we have the online application and we have the online system to go with it. So we're clear on direction of travel at the moment. All I'm saying is, yeah, it is good the cost has gone down. It's not surprising. It may carry on going down, but if it inflates, it's probably because there's a story behind it. And if there is, I'll make sure you're aware.
Thank you. Councillor Demond.
I would just note, and full disclosure, I am in the industry, but it's not all members' opinion that recruitment fees are extortionate. And indeed, many recruitment companies support local authorities and many public bodies at a very cost-effective rate, where the soft costs are not often seen. And yes, I just want it noted that it's not members' opinion recruitment is an extortionate fee.
I was comparing percentages to advertising costs only, I promise, Councillor Demond. And we have got some arrangements with some very good agencies. Unfortunately, this very specialist, hard to reach people don't tend to play ball on their normal fees. So that's...
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions on this report, we'll move to considering the report. So can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Alder and a seconder, Councillor Dumont. Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 10, get the right number, 10, which is the annual learning and development review. That's page 73 of the report. Any questions or comments on that, please? Councillor McMullen.
I was just going to ask. Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask how is it working out now? This lone working training that you're doing, because that's terribly important in all the situation you've got.
I believe the loan working provision is much better than it was before because Peter's taken central ownership of it. So he's monitoring the devices and the use. The training's always been quite good and the e-learning that he's put together is good, but it's only as good as those that use it and continue to use it, if you see what I mean. But yeah. I think we've got a better monitoring process and a better level of ownership because basically Peter's said the best way for me to manage this is just to look after it directly himself. So that's what he's doing. So I think that has improved. Just while I'm on the microphone as well, just to say that you will see the underspend on the budget for training. That hasn't been lost. And I hope you've also noted that we've effectively had 18k in extra this year. So although we're reporting an underspend of close to 20,000, it's really only 2,000. And it's really to do with the level of professional training that we're doing, which you may or may not recall tends to be 2 or 3 year courses. So once you do it once, you're repeating it every year. So sometimes there will be a drop off. And we've had that, unfortunately, going back to planning as well. 2 of our planners who recently got their masters, one resigned immediately pretty much after getting the masters because they got offered loads more money elsewhere. It's not to do with us, it's to do with the private sector. The good news is we're recovering fully the cost we invested because of our repayment agreement, bar a couple £100 because they stayed for a couple of weeks afterwards. But it is an ongoing challenge. And I meant to say earlier, and apologies, Chair, we have just introduced a golden hello on the planning officers, whereas we didn't have that before. We had that on the principal planners. It's 5k. It's now 3k on the planning officers. Actually, the first time of using it, it made no difference. So it shows how difficult the market is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMullen. Any more comments on this report? Right, if we could have a proposer, please. Councillor McMullen and a seconder, Councillor Ruffles. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And item 11 on the agenda, the Employee Health and Wellbeing Report from page 85. I know we have mentioned it, but there's probably more to say. So anyone got any questions or comments? Councillor Alder.
I was going to ask a question on this one, which would have been on 3.3. But I think Simon's already explained that you're now counting percentages against departments, because I think that's really important. If you have a yes, yes. So if you have it by department, it makes it so much easier to understand. If that could be incorporated into the next report that you give, so that makes it that much clearer. It's 3.3.
No, I understand. So you're asking that we could break down the global absence rates, or you're asking to do this on both short term and long term, that you want that broken down by service area. Apparently we're not supposed to say that. Team area now apparently
Yes.
is how we're supposed
Yes,
to say.
it would make it more meaningful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll look
If
into
that's
that, and
possible.
obviously we'll look at making sure there's employee numbers to go alongside if there's averages. I need to just see how easy that is to do. We are still finding the system quite difficult, so I need to be realistic. I would love to do that. I can see the usefulness in it, so let me just take it away and consider it if that's okay.
Thank you. Well, whoever does that will get a gold star or highly commended, whatever. Thank you.
Certificate to go behind the clock. Any other comments? Councillor McMullen and then Councillor Demand.
Yes, the wellbeing survey, you did one in June 2020. And like that, we're going to do another one. That is still the plan, is it? Another survey?
I think the last one was June 21. I think it has. We did one early doors in the pandemic, and then we did another one. So,
right.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't got the right page in front of me, so I'm going. But yes, we are doing another one. Is the key headline, and we will be asking as part of that wellbeing survey what wellbeing support staff might like and what would make them take it up.
Right.
Just going back to that point earlier about when we've put stuff on, the take up hasn't been that great anyway.
Right.
And in fact, leadership team have asked when we get to, I think it's the final paper in terms of the annual plan, that we enhance the wellbeing aspect of the plan to stress that a little bit more as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Demand.
Just a really quick comment, and the minutes will bear this out anyway, but just there's been perhaps less of a debate about on the wellbeing part of the agenda, but I think we've covered a hell of a lot of it tonight. So the absence of a debate here is not an absence of concern.
Yes, thank you. As I was saying before, I think okay. I mean, yeah, the absence and stress and lack of take of well-being initiatives. Are the initiatives meeting targeting the specific needs for the well-being, and how could we tell? But presumably you're going to be looking at that.
Sorry, say that. Sorry, Rosemary, I was noting
it's important that we
action.
continue to support the health and well-being of staff.
Yes.
And that we're hoping these planned actions that are in the report.
The wellbeing survey will ask for how they're feeling at this stage, and there will be a comparison to the last time we asked them, which was obviously during the pandemic. And part of the reason for the wellbeing survey being delayed is to get people into the blended working and settled first. So we're now dragging our feet slightly. That's my fault, as I've admitted, and we'll get that survey done, but it will include these extra questions. Just back to Councillor Alder's point on breaking the departmental or the service or team area. We will look at that. It may be something that's more easy and more meaningful at an annual stage rather than to do that every quarter, because I think that it is helpful to look across departments, but it tends to be then people say, well, why has that department got the most in? And it just is that there's a long-term sickness case, and then it starts to get quite led into individuals, which we obviously want to avoid. So it may be better to do that at the annual level rather than each quarter, but I will definitely take that away. And I take your point, and it was the annual report you were referring to when you made the comment. So thank you.
Okay, so that survey will be feeding in about how you'll be able to tell whether the initiatives. Are you listening? Are you listening?
Sorry, I'm flapping. Apologies.
Whether the survey will be leading in to say, making sure how you're targeting the specific needs with the wellbeing initiatives. Right, thank you. Any other comments? Right, could we have a proposer, please? Councillor Newton, and a seconder, Councillor Ball. Thank you very much. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12, the Human Resources and Organisational Development Annual Plan, which starts on 111. It's a big one. Are you going to talk to it?
Yeah, just because this is seeking a recommendation, I think it's just worth me giving a quick overview. You will have noted in the paper, the report, that the item was taken to the leadership team on the 17th of May. Just to say that, as I've already stressed, it's been asked that the wellbeing section is enhanced to sort of get across some more of what we've just discussed. And obviously I can include the wellbeing survey being run and being analysed, which I believe is on there, but will be strengthened in terms of the detail. Secondly, it's been asked that we undertake a peer review with the Local Government Association. They do a peer review for human resources. So I've agreed that with LT that we'll follow up on that and get that to happen. And we're looking at that to go in at Q4. And it will be in the first section in terms of resources that I would add that into the plan. So I'm just saying, before you choose to add or amend, there's a couple of amendments that will be made after this meeting, but I didn't want to do that in advance. Obviously wanted to share that with you and take your views. But when we look at approving it, if we can include those additions from LT in our thoughts.
How are you expecting us to approve something we don't know?
Well, I'm just saying there's an addition that there'll be an LGA peer review in Q4, and the wellbeing section will be enhanced with a bit more detail. That's, you could make those suggestions and approve it yourself. I'm passing the feedback on from leadership team.
Got any comments or opinions on that?
If you want me to live make the amendments on the document and then send it to you, I can, but we're just talking a couple of small amendments to the plan. And all I'm saying, if you make any other amendments, it was worth being aware that there are 2 more that are going to go in.
Councillor Ruffles? Yeah, happy. Councillor Newton? Yeah, good. Sorry, Councillor Ball. Right. So are there any other comments on this? Or shall we move to the recommendations? Councillor Newton, is that a comment or is that a proposal? You're moving to the proposed. Yes. Okay. Any seconder, please? Councillor Bull, thank you. All those in favour to include the additions? That's all that in favour. Thank you very much. Moving to item 13 on the agenda, which is the HR and payroll team update. Any questions or comments? I particularly want to ask you to clarify about the external audit, because obviously that has gone down from significant to reasonable. Now, I know there are explanations put in here about the timing and particular requests from SIAS. My specific concern is that the remedial action that you're suggesting involves the head of, you're not allowed to call yourself service anymore, head of team? Are you still a head of service doing more? Now, I'm sure that will make it happen because you're very competent, but is it the best use of your time and skills?
No, thank you for the concern and the question. I think I indicated it a little bit in the report, but essentially I asked to do this when I arrived at the organisation. So being blunt, I'm a little bit frustrated that internal audit had audited us and given us significant year after year, and now have given us reasonable with a suggestion that has been sitting there since day one, which is, they were essentially happy because the way it works in payroll is the instructions come from HR and then payroll process it. So I was surprised myself, but they were happy with the demarcation. Previously, as a HR director, I used to spend half a day every month checking the monthly payroll before it was signed off, checking the variance report. Yeah, it is quite extensive time, but it has added value. Actually, you understand the organisation better than you would do without seeing that level of payroll information. I pick up, actually with Jill, I probably won't, but in previous organisations, I used to pick up things as well in that check that were helpful to pick up. And that wasn't to do with things maybe not being done right. It was because maybe managers had overdone something, shall we say. We were paying someone too many hours when they shouldn't have that many hours for that type of work, for example. Less common in the council, but it was where I worked. So I think it will be useful. Yeah, I think Jill is not spending too long worrying about this result, because I think the key point to point out is there is no errors. There has been no errors. This is all because it would be better. from a check point of view, not because our accuracy has changed. And I have to stress that because it would be completely unfair to Jill in particular if I didn't. Secondly, slightly frustrated that the time of the audit was when Carmela had left us and we were in discussion to replace her. And they've effectively said that you haven't got a succession plan in place ready to go. And therefore that's knocked our grade down as well. So the answer from the lead at SIS is it's just a moment in time. You shouldn't reflect on this. We can come back in again and then you'll move back up to significant like you always were. I'm not going to rush to ask them to come back in and do that. They can come in whenever they're due to come in. So this isn't going to be a self-serving audit, if you see what I mean, but we will go back to significant, I'm sure. And actually, I'm happy to do that level of check, but thanks for the concern. And Carmela is back for 3 months, as you would have read. So that's helpful, but Jane will tell you that doesn't mean I shouldn't get on with getting a replacement for her that does build the replacement in payroll and also supports better our staff development admin. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the report? It was good to see we've got a new customer, Borough of Broxbourne. So well done for that. That's really good. I hope so.
Councillor Alder, I'm surprised by your question. I thought you would know that HR services from East Herts Council are paid for services. I thought I told you that several times now. So no, the good news is they're on massively higher rates than what you were paying as Sawbridgeworth, and they are a district council. But more importantly, we have a new fees and charges policy that you as members will all be very much aware of, and that has led to near enough a 50% price rise. So some of you might not want to be our customer anymore, but yes, they're definitely paying for us.
Okay, no barbed response there at all. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? No, are we done? And that's just for noting that report, so there's no need for us to vote on that. Thank you very much. Item 14, the last one, any urgent business? I haven't heard any urgent business. Have we got anything? Nope. That's it then. I think that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.